TuneCore is offering this new AI protection and what you are actually agreeing to. I was really shocked by this. Without your consent.
I'm blown away by the balls that they have to assume that much from a button click.
Outrageous. I'm personally offended. So apparently TuneCore is offering this new AI protection, and there's two components to this. I did a deep dive chatting with Benn Jordan the other day about this, and we were just like looking at the terms of service. And so what I want to do is I'm going to synthesize the information, and then I'll be sure to include portions of my conversation with Ben, and I'll be sure to also link down like the full conversation if you want to watch it. It was a long one, but it was great. Essentially what TuneCore is saying it's going to do initially got me excited, but I'm telling you, after actually going through the terms myself, I am not excited. But I'm curious what you guys think about this, because I am concerned about what this means for all of us creators who put our music onto music platforms through music distributors, because we don't have a choice in this. In order to get our music on music platforms, we have to, keywords here, we have to go through a music distributor. And that's why I have been so critical of music distributors and the contracts that you guys are required to sign in order to use their platforms. And I focus on some of the big boys. We've gone through CD Baby, Symphonic, TuneCore, oh goodness, who else? DistroKid. And TuneCore in particular, I've been very, very critical of. So with this new program that they're rolling out, there are essentially two ingredients that make this whole terms of service pie. All right, so here is the email that Ben had received. And so that's why you see his email right here. But basically there's two parts of it, and it goes for the AI data protection program. The protection against includes the unauthorized use of your content. So they go, essentially what we're saying we're going to do is TuneCore may take legal action on your behalf. So I'm going, oh my goodness, TuneCore is going to like be your lawyer? That's so cool. So in the email, they go, we're saying that if you want to opt in, you're not required to do this. We're letting you voluntarily select this, but it's meant to be like a really cool thing. And they go, you have the opportunity to opt in. And if we find that any third parties out in the world are using your AI, that we will take action against them on your behalf. And we're like, oh my gosh, like that sounds amazing. That's part number one. Part number two is that to be a part of this program, you opt in, and that is going to give us the ability to make you like a partner. And so we're going to use your music, and we will incorporate it into the AI stuff that we are developing as TuneCore. And not only that, but you get to participate in profits. So this is quite the carrot. They're saying that they will take legal action to essentially be like Content ID, right? So we know on YouTube, Content ID is so that we can keep track of unlawful uses or unauthorized uses of our music. We can collect monetization. So what TuneCore is saying is that we're going to do something kind of similar in that we will take your music, we will train our AI to develop our own AI program, and then we're also going to monitor to make sure that someone else isn't using your music to also develop AI. And so for me, I don't know too much about other companies that are doing this. So for me, my initial impression was like, wow, this actually could be pretty cool, because not a lot of people can, let's say, hire a lawyer or have a company that is out fighting the good fight on our behalfs. So what I do next is that I actually went through this with Ben, and we looked at the terms of service, because on a high level, it was kind of exciting. But I actually go through the contract that you're required to sign in order to be a part of this program. And let's look at some of the highlights. This is a legal agreement, and you are agreeing that this is a contract, right? So as a contract, it means that you are not only agreeing to the terms, but we also reserve the right to change the terms whenever. You have to come back and check the website. And this is, pretty common for most standard terms. So I'm like, okay, all right, nothing too crazy so far, but it is your responsibility. It's your responsibility to check if there's been any changes. We're not just going to send you a notice. Okay, so let's get to it. They go, well, if you want to have this grand service and what we're offering to do, you will appoint us. And we're going to be the ones that explore any licensing opportunities with your music in regards to AI development. And they go, for this purpose, you grant us the worldwide exclusive right to exploit or sublicense to TuneCore's partners, sublicensees, assigned. So it's basically you are making us the ones who will have this exclusive right to do this on your behalf. So first and foremost, I go, okay, well, that means that I can't have someone else doing it. So, I mean, I really hope that TuneCore would do a super duper job. And then I printed out all the definitions that they use in this contract, okay? And so they go, we are going to potentially exploit your music with our partners. I'm like, okay, well, what's the word partners in here? So it goes, partners means any third party, including but not limited to distribution partners, licensees, other products. And so I go, okay, well, wait, third party means any other person or entity. So I go, all right, let me reread this. So you're telling me that you have the right to potentially grant the license to my music to basically anyone. Okay, I don't love that so far, but you know what? Let's not jump to conclusions. Let's keep going. Okay, so they go on to say that the rights that you are granting are actually during the term of the agreement, but it's also after. It's also after the termination of the agreement. So let's talk about that for 2 seconds. They say during the term and after for the life of the copyright. Right here, during and after the expiration of this agreement and for the legal duration of the copyright, you are granting these rights. And so guys, look, let me kind of cut to the chase a tiny bit here. What they essentially go on to say is they go, you are giving us the right to your intellectual property for the rest of the copyright, which is your entire life plus 75 years. Okay? It's a long time. And then even at one point they go that these are like in perpetuity. So where I'm just like putting the brakes on, I'm like, you're telling me as a music distributor, you are now giving people the option. They're not being forced to do this yet, but you're giving people the option to say you can opt in to give my music to you so that you can develop your tech. That's one of the pieces here. They go, we're not only going to fight the good fight and try to deal with infringers on your behalf. We don't like really promise we're going to do that. We just reserve the right that we have the exclusive right to do it. But on the other piece, they go, we're going to use your music to develop our intellectual property. What's the consideration or benefit? Well, let's talk about that, right? So it's going to be financial. Let's go to the terms and see what it says. All right, so just kind of scrolling down here, it goes reservation of rights. Again, you're giving us these rights exclusively to cover art. And then also they go on to say here, if you wish for TuneCore to take action on your behalf. So let's say that there's an infringer out there. We're the only ones that can do it. And if you want us to do it, you have the right to ask us to, but we don't have to. And we also just reserve the right not to if we so decide. So again, for me, I go, well, it could potentially be a benefit. I'm like, that could be kind of cool that you have someone who's actively monitoring on your behalf, but they don't have to. And so that means there's a risk for preferential treatment that some artists, some people that they're working with are going to actually be taken care of, and maybe you're not. And we already know with not just TuneCore, but all the great distributors that we're dealing with, that the communication piece is one of the biggest complaints that artists have using these distributor sites. And literally, I signed another client with my law firm yesterday because it's just a legal has stopped communicating. We literally did all the things they wanted us to do, and the distributor has just stopped responding to us. We can't get a response. Our account is locked, or we can't get our royalties, or whatever it is. And then they have to hire me. And then I go and break down the door and I get it done. You guys shouldn't have to do that. So for me, I go, well, since we already know that communication and follow through and customer support seems to be a challenge for these music distributors, I have a concern about that. Okay. But let's talk about the financial terms here. Okay. At least if we're going to give the exclusive rights for TuneCore to enforce on our behalf in regards to any alleged infringement, AI platforms are using our music without our authorization, which actually is something that I'm very concerned about. Anyone can use anyone's music on any AI platform with some exception, right? You're supposed to, it's supposed to only be your music and this and that, but there's plenty of platforms where you can upload anything. And then the AI platform is going to generate a derivative work, a new thing that was based on that old thing. And so that's why we're very concerned about this. But we go, okay, well, if they're going to be paying us the good money, now it's like a partnership thing. We're excited. So let's see what the financial terms actually say. If I already clicked the opt-in button on TuneCore, can it be undone? Let's talk about that. So, and in fact, I'll tell you what, we'll look through the terms and we'll see for your opt-out what your options are. But what I can tell you just right off the bat is that if you agree to terminate, what they may come back and say, because the term that you just opted into is the term of your use, right, to be a part of this program, but also your use of the platform. So they actually put it in there and they go, you're giving us the rights to utilize your music for the AI stuff that we're developing, as well as to enforce on your behalf for the term of the agreement that you signed with TuneCore. So I want to be clear about that. When you signed up to use TuneCore, you agreed to their terms of service. So it's a separate document that we've gone through on this channel, very long. And so what they say is that you give us the rights for that term of the main agreement, plus the duration of your copyright, which is a very long time. Okay, so this is why we're like, big question mark. If you are someone that is needing help in the music business, at the end of this video, you can check out topmusicattorney.com. I have courses, I have free stuff just to kind of get you started. If you do want to deep dive, if you do want to train with me, I always say go through my music business program, which is how to think like a record label, become a record label. And then if you do want to get into touch with me or one of my lawyers, we got you covered. So let's look at these financial terms. All right, so financial terms, data says, so TuneCore shall retain 50% of any claims that it basically settles or recovers. Okay, if they determine there's some infringement, they can keep 50%, but you get 50%. Okay. But it does say here, subject further to prior deduction of duties and tax withholdings. So what I have a problem with in these legal contracts is if a company is going to be like, hey, we're going to take our expenses, basically. They go prior to deductions of duties. What does that mean? So I'm already kind of uncomfortable with what I'm reading, but I don't like that it's not clear. If you have a company that says, hey, we're going to reimburse our attorney's fees, and so that's going to be recouped before we pay you, like just say that. And so it's not clear. I don't like that. That's been one of my criticisms with TuneCore is the lack of clarity. And in this case, it's a pretty big deal because I'm like, so you're telling me that essentially a distributor who has no right to own your music in any kind of way is actually now not only going to monetize your music, and they're pretending, they're like, oh no, it's a carrot. We're going to be a partnership. It's going to be so great. But in order to train AI is given music one time. And the AI experts and the tech companies that I work with are the ones that told me this. Okay. And so they go, we take the music, we train the AI on it, and then it doesn't need the music anymore. So it's not like it keeps a copy forever. So it's really important to understand that because if now your music is integrated and AI has learned your music, it can spit out music that mimics your music. This is part of the big lawsuits by the major record labels against AI music platforms. Okay. I mean, the bottom line is that distributors are middlemen. And so now we have a middleman who's not only doing all the things that we've had issues with, but now they're saying, hey, we're going to build our tech off of your music. So let's see how much money you're getting for that. Okay, so here in the financial terms, they get into the if your music is used, right, for any, they call it experimental launches. So they go, TuneCore will pay, this is a typo. I think they didn't mean to say contractor. So I think it's meant to say you. They're going to pay you 50% of any experimental launch receipts. But then they have that same language of like subject to prior deduction of duties. What does that mean? Now, but they go in the event, this is so important, in the event TuneCore does not receive any sum in consideration of an experimental launch, you agree to waive all rights to fees and royalties forever. So in other words, what they're saying is that they're still going to use your music to develop their AI, but if they don't make anything, they're not going to pay you anything. So there is a situation, logically, that if they develop their AI and then they decide not to launch it, right? Or they decide to rebrand it and make it into something new, that essentially they used your music for free to build their tech and you got paid nothing. Or more likely, to build something and then to sell it. We've seen companies iterate. So they'll develop something and then they'll abandon it and then they end up doing something else and they kind of borrow from something else that they did. So there's a lot of cross pollination. And that's why I just go, if it was me and with Benn Jordan, when I spoke with him, I'm like, this is why he was concerned. This is why he called me up to look through the terms of service because he's like, this is weird. So the financial terms, what they're saying essentially is you get 50% of monies that are made, but we are very concerned about the whole you get nothing, but they still use your music to develop their tech. As we're kind of chatting about this, we go, all right, so we can agree that there's unclear financial compensation terms. And for you, like, at least just for the financial piece, how do you feel about it? Is there something that feels like it's convincing or it will be convincing for artists? They should do it. Maybe they'll make money.
I mean, I think that most artists are just that one thing that I see everywhere is a panic about AI, about artists feeling like AI is robbing them of their livelihood, which I could argue both sides of. Like, I think it's wrong. I think AI is wrong. I'm against AI in using things without consent. At the same time, I think that your livelihood has been siphoned out by tech 10 years ago. I think that's gone. I unfortunately, I think that like it's 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 sucking blood out of an empty vessel. That being said, so I do think that because of that panic, a lot of people will open that email and just click opt in. They say, I want protection from AI, when really what they're doing is sounds like they're giving up all protection for AI by opting in. Like, seems like they're just handing every right that they may or may not have, depending on how future rulings work with things like OpenAI and New York Times battling it out in higher courts, that they're just sort of handing out in perpetuity any sort of right that they may have clung on to. Does that sound accurate to you?
Well, my follow-up question is, okay, so should we just live in acceptance? So that's going to be the case. And you're right. There's a lot of people who are going to get that email and they're going to click accept. And at some point, like I said, I'm just curious, is that just, are they just going to make this part of their standard terms, right? Which a lot of people, most people won't read. So should we just accept it and do it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, no. Anytime you get any sort of agreement, especially regarding your music from TuneCore, DistroKid, Spotify, you need to, sadly, I want to say you need to bring that to an attorney, but that's expensive. Not everybody can do that, especially with how much musicians are paid. Every now and then we could have nice little attorney field trips like this one, where we can, have one attorney look at something that many thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people have gotten that email at this point. And I'm scared to think about how many people have clicked opt in. Yeah, but no, I mean, I would say absolutely not under any circumstances. Yeah, I'm blown away by, I guess, for lack of a better term, I'm blown away by the balls that they have to assume that much from a button click. It's more, like I said earlier in this stream, if somebody contacted me saying, hey, we want these rights that they outlined in that contract and we'll pay you for them, like me trying to think of a number of what I would ask for. I mean, it would probably be like $500,000. It'd probably be like a lot of money. Yeah. And just for them to sort of trick you into that is
well, and for me, I'm like, I've been critical of distributors in general because Benn Jordan and Miss Krystle and all the other artists out there, in order for us to have our music on streaming platforms, if we want to have it on streaming platforms, we have to, keywords, have to go through a music distributor. So there's so much power and control that these music distributors already have. So we're critical of them, blocking you out of your accounts, taking your royalties because they're like streaming fraud and they're making claims that may or may not be true. So setting that aside, now we have this whole new thing where it's like, this is the first that I'm aware of. This is the first music distributor that's basically saying you can be a part of helping us to build our tech potentially for free by giving us your music.
Yeah, you could help us make a new Suno with actual consensual data, but it's not going to be any different. Just because it's consensual, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that we're going to pay you for it. That just means that we're not going to be quite as legally problematic as the current services are, which draws back to what I was saying earlier, where it really makes me wonder what VC meeting resulted in this email being sent out in this whole program. Like, it really seems to me like somebody was like, hey, we're going to pull our money out if we're going to need that investment back, or we're not going to renew our investment unless you start something that competes with these larger projects, because that's where because they want to resell it to other VCs for more money.
Well, I think where I'm going to have a tipping point is, it's one thing if there's misinformation, and so people mistakenly opt into this because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm scared of the AI, I want to protect it. So they opt in for that reason, essentially putting their music, in my, experience, a little bit at risk just by doing the thing to de-risk themselves. But
Right.
Setting that aside, if I catch wind that TuneCore at some point just makes this automatically part of their terms, so meaning everyone has to, and then I find out that other distributors are also just doing it like this, I'm gonna hit the roof, because having to share, that's what it is, having to share your intellectual property with a company when you don't have a choice is outrageous. This is the first time I'm reading these terms of service, and I go, at some point, I wonder if TuneCore or any other platform that decides to do this if they just put them in their standard terms that you have to sign, because most of you don't read the terms of service. Okay, most people just don't when they use platforms. And my thought was, if that's the case, and then they just make this part of what they do, that means people will just be using a platform very innocently, like TuneCore, to just get their music on Spotify, but then inadvertently giving rights to their music to a company, which I think is outrageous. I'm personally offended by not only how this is written, but that there aren't protections in place to ensure that if you are going to monetize someone's music and you're going to build some tech off of it, well, you know what? If it doesn't make money, I still think that you need to compensate the creators. I think you still need to do something. But let's keep going, because there's a big boy in here that we caught at the end of a very long conversation. You know what? I just kind of want to jump to it. So of course, in all of, these wonderful terms of service, they have the standard miscellaneous waivers. You have to give notices of breach. None of our officers, directors, employees, or agents will be liable to you for anything more than $100. So lots of disclaimers. Choice of laws, New York. You need to come and hire a New York attorney if you want to try to do anything. But by the way, like we said, even if you do want to sue us, the most that you can sue us for is $100. But then we get here. All right, let's make this nice and big. And it says, TuneCore may assign these AI and data protection terms and conditions and or any rights or obligations hereunder without your consent. So I just want to keep that in everyone's minds who decide to opt into this, that the right to utilize your music, to build AI off of your music, can be given literally to anyone at any time by TuneCore. Thank you.
I didn't even catch that part. Well, how was that protection?
Yeah.
That's like the mob coming over and being like, hey, you know what? You give us some money and nobody's going to rob your place. And then they literally offer free guns out in front of it to anybody who wants to pick one up. They're just like, here you go. Have fun. Pillage.
So look, final thoughts. Let's go back on the screen. I guess I'll give mine to start. You can tag team. But I have concerns. Okay. So it's my job as an attorney to always look through the worst case scenarios, because I'm like a glorified firefighter. I prevent problems by just being like, hey, this could be a problem. Maybe we don't do it. And so I would be very nervous about using this because, the financial compensation terms are not clear. It's not clear about the usage, right? These partners, the assignees, where your stuff's going to end up, how it's going to be used. And also, I'm just not comfortable giving my intellectual property to another company who may or may not ever pay me whatsoever to build their technology.
I will actually piggyback on that, but I will say that definitely I would not opt into this. However, I kind of just say anything because if somebody sued me and my insurance didn't cover it, I would just disappear into the woods and be fine. so I have no liability. But to hear an attorney say maybe think about before signing that's actually, I feel like that's a big red flag in general, because like most attorneys, whenever they go on the internet, they're like, I'm not gonna, no comment, just because you're an attorney. But yeah, so hearing you say tread carefully, that means a whole lot more than people might think it means.
TuneCore may assign the right to use your music and any rights and obligations that you gave to TuneCore pursuant to this for trusting your music distributor who said, hey, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to protect you from these unauthorized uses of your music. And P.S., by the way, just letting you know that at any point, I can assign those rights to anyone at any time. And the rights that you grant to me are for the life of your copyright. It's not even during the term that you use TuneCore, because at least we could say during the time that we, are on the platform, if we want to give these rights, and so it's a limited use kind of thing. That is one thing. It still doesn't make it that much better, to be honest, but that's one thing. But then if they're saying, no, that's not the case, it's actually in perpetuity. It's for like the life of the copyright and beyond. This is extremely outrageous. And some of the points that Ben made, he's like, this is the equivalent of saying we're going to protect you and arm and guard against you. And then what do you say? Putting guns outside the door for everyone else. So anyway, guys, look, what do you think? Drop a comment down below. I see that there's at least one of you that has already opted in to this. And I always look at the four corners of the contract of what it actually says and what you are actually agreeing to. And I was really shocked by this and pretty upset of what this means for that a music distributor who has so much power and has so much control and is now saying, hey, let's basically be tech partners where potentially we're going to use your music and not pay you. How will you know if they used your stuff to build their AI in the first place? You don't. And that's what I'm saying. Like for me, I understand what the record label complaints are, where they're suing Suno and Udio, and they're like, you're admitting that you used our music that we own as Universal to train your AI. And then lo and behold, your AI is spitting out music that mimics our music. So there's all kinds of issues with that. There's dilution of the market because now, like, there's all kinds of songs just like our song, and our song was really special. And now, really, it isn't because there's all these other songs. And so I understand what the argument is here. And I know even for me as a creator, my sensitivities of just being like, if I input my music into any of these platforms, they all say the same thing. They go, you basically give us a license to use your stuff to train our AI, and your stuff may come out essentially in someone else's output. If my music was used to train their AI, everything their AI generates has a piece of my music. They can't claim it doesn't. I would be due a fraction of what they earn. I mean, that's what the major record labels are claiming. You used our stuff, we're entitled to a licensing fee besides the copyright infringement. Do you really trust them, and in particular the ability of their tech to track the use and monetization of your music? I mean, yeah, that's a really good point. No, I don't work for this company. I just know some of the challenges that these companies do have, and the fact that they didn't say it. This is where I can the only thing I can truly speak on is what did they put in their contract? And they didn't put anything in the contract that leads me to believe that they are going to be clear, that they are going to be transparent, because they weren't in the contract. Reading that makes my stomach twist and turn and pitch into spasms. Ugh. I've had a few days to think on this and to digest it just a little bit, and it's a lot. And to me, it's pretty upsetting because I'm very worried. In this case, TuneCore sent an email to its users and gave them the option. But for the majority of people who read an email and the email says, hey, if you opt in, we're going to, the bullet points that they put in their email, we're going to, in fact, let me just read this. I'm not even going to put words in their mouth. Protection against unauthorized use of your content, empowerment on future opportunities. I mean, what a sales pitch. Sign me up. Question under the contract: if you wanted to sell the rights to your music to someone else, would that contract prevent you from doing so? It's just going to, not necessarily. So what they are saying is that they go, we are the exclusive company that can basically seek out infringers who have, used your music allegedly for their different AI platforms. But it could create conflict, right? Because if you have an attorney, right, can your attorney just go and take action on your behalf? Well, if I was TuneCore's attorney, I'd be like, no, you agreed that we are the ones that reserve the right. Now, they do have a section in there, and they go, well, if we decide that we're not going to pursue it and you ask, you have to wait 90 days, but, we can tell you, and then you can go do it yourself. So they do technically say that, but, again, yikes, for 3 months to wait. It sounds like if you opt out, it isn't actually an opt out at all, as they can do it anyway. Is that a correct understanding? No, that isn't my understanding. That what they're saying is what we just read is a separate new contract. So they're saying this is a brand new thing and you don't have to be a part of this. What I'm saying is that, at least as of now, they're giving you the opportunity to voluntarily say yes. My concern is that people won't know what they're saying yes to, because they have a great email saying, we're going to protect you, we're going to do all this stuff. But it does say that you have to agree. So it's a new contract. My concern is that at some point, this will just become part of their standard terms, because as we went through, it says it's up to you to come and check back and see when we've made updates to our terms. So couldn't they just integrate this into the terms that you guys already agreed to? And it's not just this company. What other companies are in the process of doing this? So guys, as my community, if you ever get emails like this from any of your distributors, anything like this, please let me know and we'll talk about it. We will protect you. Trust us. Yeah. So guys, please drop a comment down below. What do you think about this? Also, if you received anything like this from your own distributor, let me know in the comments down below.